Hello, Bravo bosses, and welcome to the Bravo Investigator podcast with me, your host, Dana. Today on the Reality Roundup agenda, we are talking about Vanderpump Rules slash The Valley, Summer House, Real Housewives of New Jersey, and then Love is Blind, the weddings and the reunion. Let's get into it. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a good week and weekend. Mine was pretty good, except that I was sick actually, so that's why I'm not really wearing any makeup and forgive me, I'm over it. It causes me so much stress every time I record this podcast for video, and it shouldn't. It's stupid, but everyone has their anxieties and their own personal things that really get them. And while no one else may notice my skin, I'm always just noticing it. So I just it just makes me self-conscious to do video, but you know what? Whatever. I'm putting myself out there. Sometimes I'm going to be sick, sometimes I'm going to look great. I am as I am. So, hello and happy Monday to everyone. So, yeah, I'm finally feeling better. I had a really sore throat last week and it's finally getting better over the weekend. I took like a lot of naps, so that felt good. And I was actually going to be adopting a dog over the weekend and it really didn't work out. I went to see the dog with my dog over the weekend and she just barked at me the entire time. She was super vicious. She would not calm down. She wouldn't let me walk her. She wouldn't even let me give her a treat. It was a lot. So I was worried about like how would I even get her home if she wouldn't even let me get that close to her. And she has a lot of other issues, like she can't be around men, which I thought was like a great thing for me because like I also hate men. So I thought like, oh, that so spoke to me when I saw that in her profile. I was just like, I also hate men. This is like a match made in heaven. But she just has a lot of trauma, I guess, from being she was like a cruelty seizure. And I live in a busy city, and as much as I have a quiet home, I worry about like walking her in the city, and there's men there, and there's it takes her such a long time to warm up to people that I wouldn't even be able to send her to daycare. And as a single woman, like I have to be able to do that. So unfortunately, this one isn't working out, and it really sucks. But I'm gonna keep on trucking, keep on trying, and find myself another dog to adopt. What else happened over the weekend? Well, I did a mini recaps episode for you guys over the weekend where I recapped The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Summer House, Southern Charm, Southern Hospitality, and the reunion. So I don't know if how many of you guys are watching Southern Hospitality. The season three just ended. I think it was a pretty good season, so definitely go back and check it out on Bravo. I definitely think they'll get renewed for season four, and I hope that Will comes back because he has some splaining to do. All right, well, let's get into it. Jax Taylor was on Bravo's Hot Mic podcast, and he went on to talk about his addiction to cocaine. And no one saw this coming. Sorry, not the cocaine. We all saw that coming. No one saw it coming that he was going to be doing this podcast. It sort of just came out of nowhere. And, the realization came in as he starts talking that The Valley season three, or sorry, season two is coming up in a couple of weeks. And that's probably why he decided to do this now. Because from the bits we know of what happened on The Valley season two, it had a lot to do with him going to a mental health facility or slash rehab and that there was something going on with him. So we definitely know all of that's going on. We know that there was a lot of tension between him and Brittany, and we know that he probably ended up looking really, really bad this season. So he probably wanted to try to come on and I'm not going to say create an image for himself, but he probably wanted to do maybe some damage control. And I'm not saying that's why he came forward with his addiction. It was really interesting to hear him say that. Now, I know it's crazy because, like, literally when I posted about this, everyone was like, and the sky is blue and the grass is green. And honestly, I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy. Like, not that I'm from a small town, I'm not, but like, okay, I've never even seen cocaine before. Like, it's not something I don't know. So I knew because people talked about it in terms of Jax, but I didn't know, no. And like I have this shirt, I should be wearing it right now. I'm such an idiot. I'm not wearing it. I have a shirt. You know that Andy Warhol shirt of him where I think it's from when he's in Hawaii and his hair is all like up in the air and he looks like all crazy. And the guys ended up making a shirt of it for him, but I have a shirt of that. And I think Brittany saying like, "Oh, you drank too much last night, baby." And he's definitely coked out in that. And then a lot of people are coming out with scenes that they found. Like even Sheena talked about it on her podcast, where she pointed out that there's a scene in Jackson Brittany's wedding in season 8 where there's like a plate of cocaine just on a table. And it's just crazy. And not that production was ever pushing it or anything like that, but just crazy that it was just like a part of this. Or sometimes I go back and listen to old recaps that other people do. I really, really like. She's Speaking with Emily Hanks. And when she does her recap of season 6, which is the season where Jax cheats on Brittany with Faith, she's talking about that crazy party, the one where they released the videotape of their post-coital conversation, and Emily Hanks is talking about how coked out Jax is in that scene, and I just was like, oh, because I just didn't know what that looked like. So it's almost like one of those things where your friend tells you that they're gay, and like you knew, but they never told you. But you knew, but like it's still a little shocking because they had never told you. Does that make sense? So I don't know. I was just like, oh, okay. So a lot of things came out of this. What I think I'm gonna do is just sort of recap the highlights of it. I don't want to talk about it too much because Brittany has already come back with her podcast that she did with Kristen and basically made notes. She actually fully said that she made notes on Jax's podcast so she could basically debunk the things that he said. So all the things that Kristen and Brittany ended up saying in When Reality Hits were honestly so thought out and so thoughtful and so analytical to the point where I don't even think I could have analyzed it any further. They did such a great job, probably because they know him so well. So when we talk about that, we'll get into more of the analysis and like the why and all of that. So I think that's sort of how we'll do it today. It's a lot. But, so Jack said that he is a cocaine addict. He said that he wanted to do this because season 2 is coming up. He said he's been dealing with this on and off since he was 23 and he's 45 now, which is crazy. Now, he said he was 82 or 83 days sober, and a lot of people pointed out that this was interesting because most addicts know exactly how many days sober they are, and so to just be sort of wishy-washy about it is suspect. He said that he went to rehab twice, and the word rehab is so confusing to me at this point that I don't know. That's just what I have. He said that he and Brittany basically like the catalyst for the second time was when he and Brittany were going to a doctor's appointment and he saw a man's name come up on Brittany's phone and he lost it and Cruz was in the back seat and he had slipped and gotten high the night before. And when he gets high, the next morning his come down is like really, really, really bad and he's super like angry and aggressive. It's the worst. So he just kind of lost it on her. And because Cruz was in the back seat, he knew he needed to go back. He didn't put up a fight. And then Alex Baskin said, yeah, Brittany reached out to me and your sister and Lori and Ryan. Ryan Revel is his manager about you going. And Jack says, like, yeah, I only stayed 7 days because I felt like I was done and I was good and had regrouped. And he said the first time he was in for 30 days. And before that, he said he went to his family doctor and he was on Lexapro and it didn't work for him. He said he's never had a sober screaming match with Brittany, which sounded ridiculous. But then again, like, I don't know the days that he was sober or not sober, so I can't sit there and pinpoint like well, that was the moment or that was the moment. Like, I don't know. He said he wasn't fully invested the first time and didn't take it seriously, which is interesting because I'm trying to think back to that time because I think he was trying to portray that he was taking it seriously. At that time, he said he didn't think he was an addict and it was embarrassing to go back the second time. And I can understand that. It is embarrassing to finally admit that, especially probably in LA where everyone is sort of doing what you're doing. And so even when on Watch What Happens Live, when Andy had Sandoval and Kyle on, Kyle Cook, Andy said to Sandoval, "Oh, did you know about Jax's drug addiction?" And Sandoval's like, "Well, yeah, like I've known him for like many years or whatever." But it wasn't more about the addiction; it was more just like I've seen him, like I've been around him. Is more how he answered it. He's like, "Well, yeah, I've been like around him for like 20 years," meaning they were doing drugs together, right? It's not like Jax was off doing this alone, or not that that's how I saw it. He thinks he's meant to talk about mental health as like a living. He said he goes to therapy once a week and he wants to start outpatient. Now, outpatient is therapy. So inpatient is when you're like in a facility, and outpatient is when you're outside a facility. So if he's in therapy, that is outpatient, but that's something Brittany mentions, and we'll get to that. He says he's drug tested once a week, which is his choice. He said he and Brittany had a blow up last night, which I guess is right before this recorded. And but didn't he just say he only fights with her sober and Archie sober right now? He says he has to walk on eggshells around her and he's done everything she's asked, so he doesn't know what more she wants from him. And Alex says, well, you've put Brittany through a lot. And Jax says, well, we've put each other through a lot, and it takes two to fight. And that is so Jax. That is so something he always said whenever Brittany would say, like, well, are you going to change? And are you going to do this? And are you going to apologize? He's like, well, are you going to apologize? And like, you've done things wrong and you're not perfect, sweetie. Right? Like, that's his thing. You're not perfect, sweetie. And the fact that he still maintains that is really annoying, actually. Like, you have put her through a lot, Like, I don't think her fighting with him in normal relationship ways is the same as what he's done to her, but we'll get to that. Um, Jack says that he was really unhappy and he did what he always does to push women away so that they break up with him. He talked about being super insecure and being uncomfortable in his skin. He said that what made him reach out to random girls for validation was this insecurity where he just feeling like he needs validation, he needs someone to just tell him that he's hot, and so he'd invite random girls over. And he was like, I fixed the drinking and alcohol problem, but this is still something I need to fix. And I really didn't like how he kept using the word fix. Like, you haven't fixed being an addict. You're always an addict. And it's probably not the correct way to look at it as a fix because it's something that you're doing like one day at a time. So you haven't like, a check, because he talks about things in that way. He talks about even his bipolar, like, you can take medication for that. So he thinks of it as like a checkbox, like a check. So I can check off like I've gone to rehab or I've done these things. So I've checked off alcohol and drugs, but it's something you're constantly working on, especially currently. You're only 82 or 83 days sober. We don't really know the number. Then he asks Alex what you call someone who needs constant validation from women. Don't you go to therapy, Jax? Like you just said that. He said that he was so upset about Brittany sleeping with his friend Julian 2 weeks after they got separated, but he thinks it actually started before because no one actually like does that fast. So she must have been talking to him before. So he tried to hurt Brittany by like telling her about like all these girls that he'd been hooking up with. Um, God. And he says he's California sober. So right after that, Brittany posted a response on Instagram on her story, and she wrote, his addiction unfortunately has done irreparable damage to my son and I. I've spent years trying to help him. I wish more than anyone I could say how proud I am of him today, but I'd be lying. His actions will speak for themselves. And to those asking why I stayed if I knew he had a problem for all these years, you can't help who you fall in love with. I've done absolutely everything in my power to get him the help he desperately needed. Unfortunately, I was naive and believed his empty promises and his pleas to change for years. Once you have a child with someone, it's not easy to leave. It took everything in my power to gather the strength to walk away. For those that have been through similar, you get it. For those that question me, that's okay. I'm in a much better place now. So then Brittany had Kristen Doty on her podcast, and they both had taken notes on Alex Baskin's podcast, and they had a lot of things to refute on what Jack said. So Brittany said that the night of this doctor's appointment that where they got in this fight that led to him going to rehab the second time, he had gotten high the night before and he was getting fucked up and he was texting her all of these horrible things and he was treating her like shit the next day on the way to the doctor's appointment because he was coming down from, his high, and he had already made her cry before the guy's number popped up on the phone, so she wanted to make that clear. Then he starts talking all this sexual stuff that he was doing with other girls. She didn't really get into it, but like I kind of wish she did. And that was the day he got in the hit and run. Brittany said it wasn't about Cruz being in the back seat as to why he went to rehab the second time. She said it was because she basically staged an intervention and had to call all of these people, including his sister and Ryan and Lori and Alex Baskin. And he wouldn't have went if his job wasn't threatened again. So it sounds like his job was threatened both times. And then she said in the first place was a mental health facility and the second place was rehab. But when he went to the second place, he left after a day. And then he went back to the first place, which was the mental health facility, and only stayed 17 days. So I was like, wait, what? So he never actually went to rehab? And I'm not sure if anyone else took it that way because she said he left after a day, but then he went back. But she said it was the first place. And she said the first place was mental health and not rehab. So I don't know. She said he started drinking right again after his first stint. And she said even if he is sober now, his actions haven't changed, like meaning his anger. She said it's a lie that he never fought with her sober, which obviously. And this is really interesting. She said this whole thing about him taking Lexapro and it never working. So, I mean, I'm sure he mentioned it to show that he has taken steps in the past to work on his mental health. She says that he never filled that Lexapro prescription. She says that she still has it in the drawer. So it's interesting. Like he goes on these public platforms and he lies, but I think he's such a good liar at this point that he believes so many of his lies that he probably can't even discern what is true and what is false. So I don't know. So Brittany also says that one night she went out with Kristen. Oh, I remember this. This was like something that she talked about on Watch What Happens Live. So she goes out with Kristen for dinner. They're in bed by 9. The next morning, Jax is coming down from his high, and he made up this entire story that Luke texted him that Brittany told Kristen how bad the relationship was. The whole thing wasn't true. Like, Luke had never even texted him. So he picks this entire insane fight that he made up completely in front of their son, and that's when she packed her bags and she left. And she said that she had to deal with these come downs almost every day. So that's an insane thing to think about, right? Because you're basically dealing with someone's mood swings that are not their fault in the sense that it's something that's happening in their body as an outcome of something, right? Like it's a withdrawal symptom. But if they weren't doing the thing that's causing the withdrawal, they wouldn't be in that situation. So that's so insanely frustrating. And I can't imagine being with someone for 10 years where you're basically dealing with these ups and downs and these highs and lows. And in addition to that, the audacity that he had to comment on her drinking in season 1 of The Valley and to do that on camera when he fully knew that he was doing this shit. And I remember that one scene where she was like sick in the bedroom when they went on that Big Bear trip. And he comes in the room and he's like, "Why don't you just stop drinking at all? At all, at all, at all?" And it made me think, like, why don't you just stop doing cocaine at all, at all? Right? Like, it's so insulting to just say that to her and to kind of make her out to be an alcoholic on camera when for 20 years he'd been going through this. That being said, I want to have some compassion in the sense that it does take people a long time to come to terms with being an addict. It makes me think a lot about Carl Radke as well because I've been really following his story. Um, but it just doesn't give you the right to speak to people the way that you do. Okay, so then she wants to also mention that she did not start talking to Julian until after she and Jax had broken up. She wanted to make sure everyone knows that Julian was not Jax's best friend. They were not that close. And she said that if she had not gotten, yeah, like his sister Lori, Ryan, and production involved, he never would have gone to rehab at all. And what's really terrible is that she started believing all the horrible things he said to her. Now, we don't know a lot about that. We know from one like pickup scene and from this podcast that he has called her fat. But from what we sort of kind of gather, it seems like it was a lot of things a lot of the time. And that kind of thing can weigh on you. If someone is constantly coming down on you about your appearance or whatever it is, like for me, for example, if I'm applying for job after job after job and I'm not getting the job, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Or if I'm going on date after date after date and I'm not getting calls back, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Right. So, of course, if he's constantly hammering into her mind that she is fat or that she's a bad mom or that I don't know what the things he's saying to her are, but that's really, really sad because that's when you're probably not going to leave. And I think that's actually such a good point to make because for people to say like why would you stay with him? Maybe he beat her down mentally so much that she didn't even feel like she could do better. Of course she can, and I'm so glad that she has so many friends who uplift her and make her feel like she's the best person ever and take her out and she's getting laid and she's doing her thing. But, that is a very good reason to not want to be with somebody anymore, I have to say. She also said that she's rebranding when reality hits and it'll be all hers. So that means Jax will continue with In the Mind of a Man. But here's the thing about Jax. So he's admitted that he needs to feel validated, right? So I think he's using this mental health platform, this mental health stuff now to feel validated because he said on his podcast he became a mentor to some of the people in rehab. So he kind of loved it. And he loves doing the pod about being in the mind of a man and answering mental health questions because he thinks people are asking him for mental health advice. So if he never actually went to rehab for more than a day, I don't know how this cocaine issue is fixed, but I also think these places have standard durations for a reason. So I really don't like this whole idea that he only stayed for 17 days or whatever. It feels wildly irresponsible to leave ever early. That just seems crazy. That should be at the direction of the physicians in there, in my mind. But, you know, I think we have a really crazy season ahead of us. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there's a huge element of him doing this in anticipation of season two of The Valley coming out. I will say, as one small piece of this, I do think it is brave for him to come out with this addiction. And I think that one positive that'll come out of it is that it'll hold him accountable because even if he doesn't really feel like he's an addict or maybe he's doing this to be performative, he now no longer can drink or do drugs. He can't because now the world knows that he's a drug addict. So he said this to the world, it's in print, it's everywhere. So now the world is watching. So at least we hold him accountable. And to me, that's something. Okay, so Lala and Randall have come to a custody agreement, which is great. Let me take a look at this article I found here. So, the Vanderpump Rules alum revealed that she and ex-fiance Randall Emmett have resolved their lengthy custody battle over their 3-year-old daughter Ocean. You guys, the custody battle is over, Lala shared during an Amazon live stream on March the 4th. It's officially ended. We're done with it, so here's my tea for the day. While the reality star didn't provide details of the arrangement during the stream, she noted that the settlement worked out in their child's favor. After over 3 years, we have signed an agreement that is best for our daughter Ocean, she continued, so I'm very, very happy about that. And with the legal saga seemingly behind the former couple who ended their engagement in 2021 when Ocean was 7 months, Lala highlighted how the resolution mirrored her improved co-parenting relationship with the film producer. So, I mean, that's kind of amazing to hear, isn't it? Like, crazy to think that Lala and Randall can come to a good place. I mean, for the sake of Ocean, I think that's amazing, obviously. I just wish way back when they broke up, we were actually able to get more information about what was really going on. Because of all the legalities of it, and he was tied up in so many lawsuits, we never got much. And there was that one documentary, the Randall scandal, but there wasn't much in it. Like, honestly, he made like one assistant push drugs and made another assistant like ship a pool table overseas. I don't know. It was weird, but we've heard Lala talk about like casting couches and stuff, but like, where's that stuff? Where's the women who have come forward? Like, not that I don't believe it, I believe it wholeheartedly. Just where is the stuff, right? Like, why is it all tied up in the law? He's not that famous. I just wish it could have been more part of her story because it is so interesting. And her family is such a big part of her story. Ocean is such a big part of her story. And she couldn't include it for such a long time. Plus, this battle was a literal battle in her life. It was so much of her life that she couldn't talk about. But aside from that, I'm just like sort of just so curious as to like what all the other shit he did was, right? And if it really was that bad. But for the sake of Ocean, of course, again, I'm so happy for her. Now, in other Vanderpump Rules news, someone who I thought I would hopefully never have to talk about again is James Kennedy making a little bit of news again. He posted a Instagram story with the Tate brothers with the caption, Bitcoin. No, wait, what did it say? It said, that's a Bitcoin. Now, I don't know if you guys remember that reference. So when Raquel broke up with him on the season 9 reunion and handed him back the engagement ring, he said, that's a Bitcoin. Now, those guys, the Tate brothers, they are known for sex trafficking, and they are literally being charged for sex trafficking at this time. So people obviously came down on James for the picture, obviously. And he then posted a response and said, I regret posting a photo with the Tate brothers at an event last night. I was unfamiliar with their content and allegations against them. I only knew them as podcasters that had posted a viral clip about Vanderpump. I have since educated myself and I condemn their beliefs. I am sorry to all that I offended. Now, my good friend, Nat, follow her on Instagram and TikTok. She's an amazing TikToker. She caught the very interesting note that when he posted, that's a Bitcoin, that was a citation to the Tate brothers because they are also known for their content about Bitcoin. So when he said, I don't know them for their content. I only know them for being podcasters. You do know them for their content, which was highly based on Bitcoin because you put that's a Bitcoin. So thank you for not pointing that out. I also heard some horrifying news that he might be on Bravo's Hot Mic this week. This really makes me nervous and upset. That one, that Bravo would do that. Two, I just I just think this is going to create such a dumpster fire. Maybe I'm just getting myself all ramped up for something that isn't actually happening, but Lala said it. She said she heard it. She said she heard it as a rumor, and I mean, it's Lala. Like, it's not like it's a rumor that I heard here in Toronto, right? So it's a pretty viable source. So, I mean, I feel like he's just going to deny all allegations against him. He's going to cry. He's very good at that. He's very good at getting the nation and people to feel bad for him. And I'm worried that if he comes forward and denies all allegations that have ever been made against him ever, that forces a bunch of potential victims to feel like, well, shit, if I don't come forward now, the last thing that's been said about this is it never happened. And so that kind of makes me worried that it kind of puts a bunch of victims in a situation where they sort of feel forced now to come forward and debunk something he says. So again, maybe I'm just getting ahead of myself, but I just get nervous whenever I see him in the media because I was just hoping he would go away forever. Okay, let's move on to Summer House. So Lindsay and West got in a bit of an Instagram feud over the past couple of weeks. I don't know if you guys listened to Jason Tark's podcast. He does like a money podcast, and he had West Wilson on a couple of weeks ago. And there was one part of it that I did clip, and to be honest, I was walking when I heard it, and I made a note to myself in my mind, oh, you should post that clip that he made, that note about Lindsay not coming back next year, and then I just kind of forgot about it. Morgan from Morgan's Pop Talks caught it, and good for her because it kind of went viral. But basically, it was about Wes saying that Lindsay wouldn't come back next summer because she has a baby, and sort of like the how crazy that would be that she would come back next summer. And then Lindsay sort of clapped back at him on Instagram saying something to the effect of like, "Well, I did more this summer than you did." And then she went on what's the podcast? Mention It All. It's a Betches podcast with Dylan Hafer. Just the other day, she was on there with Gabby, and so she was kind of explaining it a bit more. She was like, "Look, okay, Wes called me 5 times after that, and then I finally answered the phone." And she explained, "Look, you're kind of coming for my job when you say things like that." Because she's like, "Listen, this is my career. This is my job at this point. So when you make these comments that are like that would be like appalling that I would come back with a child, it creates that sort of impression to the rest of the world too. So, just shut your mouth when it comes to that sort of thing." So I think that's fair and I think that makes sense. Of course, he didn't mean anything by it, and he was asked the question. And the way he said it was, I'm trying to remember, the question was just like, "Do you think Lindsay will come back next summer?" And he's like, "What? No, how would she? I mean, unless they get a babysitter, I couldn't babysit." So something to that effect. But, I think maybe he needs to come up with a more media trained answer. He's still kind of new to all of this. But I like that Lindsay has still kind of taken him under her wing and kind of, taught him the rules when it comes to Instagram. Because the thing is, he's already been burned a couple of times when it comes to what he's been doing since coming on this show. So, I think Lindsay Hubbard, of all people, is the one who can kind of teach him and put him in his place. So, I kind of want to mention a little bit more about Bailey Henderson. So she's the one who we know leaves later on in the season of Summer House. There's all these rumors about what happened. I've given you guys a few of those rumors, some being that she was talking shit about the cast and production back in the city and was fired. That rumor seems to be dead in the water. Then I told you guys that the rumor was that she was hiding a boyfriend. But I still didn't understand why that would be a big deal. Now that rumor is a little bit more confirmed. Now it's still a rumor, but I heard it from Samantha Bush, who's the Bravo historian, who talked about it on Bravo We're Black podcast. And she said that she heard from a very reliable source that basically that's true. But basically what Bailey did was she had blocked all of the Summer House cast from her Instagram stories. Like you can block certain people from your stories, but she forgot Amanda and I guess was posting her boyfriend, which is so funny because it's like, why do you have to post him so much? But if you follow her, you'll see that she posts him all the time. So I guess Amanda saw it. And then apparently Amanda, according to Samantha Bush, apparently Amanda was like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like confronted her and was like, "You lied to us." And like none of the cast speaks to her anymore. Now that part I don't believe because she has been consistently posting photos from Summer House from the seasons or from the episodes that she's been in. And all of the cast have been liking it. Plus, in last week's episode, didn't Amanda say, "Oh, Bailey's not going to be here. She's having boyfriend problems." And Bailey's going to be in future episodes because I know that she's in the episode where Carl soft launches Soft Bar. So I guess it does have to do with the boyfriend, but the whole rest of it maybe is a little bit murky. But I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know why she felt she had to lie about that. Like, well, I wonder if they just wouldn't have casted her if she had a boyfriend. I mean, I guess maybe you're less fun. I don't want to say that. That's so stupid. She's a young girl who her boyfriend could have come on the weekend for some of the parties. Like, I don't think she had to pretend to be single, but maybe I'm crazy. I don't know how to get on this show. So last week, Paige and Hannah were hosts at Vanity Fair, and they got to interview Megan Thee Stallion. And I don't know if you guys heard about this, but basically Hannah said something to Megan Thee Stallion about her music making her want to fight. And this was not a good look because to associate the word fighting with a black woman is very discriminatory, especially when Megan Thee Stallion's music isn't that type of music. Hannah did end up making an apology on Instagram, which I'm going to read to you guys. It was 4 days after the event. She wrote, interviewing Megan Thee Stallion was a dream of mine. I love her music, and it's my go-to whenever I need to boost my confidence before a show. Looking back at the interview, I wish I used any other word except fight to describe how her song impacts me. It was a careless choice of words, and though there was no ill intent, I recognize and acknowledge that what I said had a deeper meaning, and I'm so sorry to Megan. I appreciate everyone who brought this to my attention, Hannah. So this is complex, you guys. I mean, as someone who is not a person of color, I don't feel like I could speak to the complexities of this. I do recommend that you go listen to Everyone's Business But Mine with Cara Berry because I think she did a really, really good job explaining why this matters. I will say that Hannah in the news lately is kind of irking me. I don't I like Hannah and I love Giggly Squad, but I don't love that she's perpetuating this rumor that Kyle got her fired. And listen, I hate Kyle, but I think it's a very weird thing that she's continuing to do and apparently perpetuating a rumor about Kyle and Amanda or Kyle cheating on Amanda up to their wedding. I don't know. It just seems like she's doing a lot of shady things behind the scenes and this, not shady whatsoever. This is more just like a misstep, but it's an important misstep. You know what I mean? Like you would never, I think it's very obvious to not use that kind of word. And in a media landscape, you have to be very careful about your choice of words and the things that you say and be more cognizant of your surroundings. So I'm just getting a little concerned about Hannah and I'm currently doing a season 5 rewatch. And I feel like there's certain people who can sometimes get a little too big for their britches. And I love Hannah and I love Paige and I love Giggly Squad and I think they're amazing. But I think that there's sometimes we can get maybe too lost in something or too excited with all the fame or all the things that we have and sort of maybe get lost in it. And maybe she just needs to just come back down a little bit to a place where maybe she can sort of normalize herself and maybe re-educate herself a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and we don't have a lot here, but Dolores Catania's ex-husband, Frank Catania, revealed that he secretly married his fiancée, Brittany, after having proposed last year, and they had actually postponed their wedding last year. He announced this on Melissa Gorga's podcast On Display, and he's like, we're married. He explained that they quietly did this back in November, but they're planning to have a bigger ceremony in the future, and he said that David married them. So David, Dolores' ex, which is just so funny because I mean, this family, this is how it always is. But that makes me wonder if Dolores was there because I don't think Dolores and David still speak. But, I think Frank still lived with David for a while after Dolores. I mean, yeah, I mean, this family is just the way it is, right? Everyone stays in each other's lives forever, exes and, and everyone. So, whatever, but I think it's really cute that Frank finally found his person. I hope that he doesn't cheat on her because, he's sort of famously been this boats and hoes guy. And, he knew that monogamy wasn't for him, but seeing him with Brittany, he seems so insanely happy. And if he finally found his one, I think that's beautiful. I think it's really cool if it's true and if it works when there's a woman who can like be the one who changes the man, right? So maybe Brittany was the one he wanted to settle down for. She's his one and only, but maybe. Maybe I'm speaking too soon. Okay, let's get into Love is Blind. So I want to talk about the weddings and the reunion, which aired last night, and a little bit of tea that I heard on the side as well. And I guess just overall, this season of Love is Blind was definitely our most boring. I think the first 6 episodes could have been an email. But the little drama that we got with Dave and Lauren, I did think was very interesting in a complex way in terms of being able to analyze it as a podcaster. So that's been an enjoyable step for me, as well as just listening to everyone talk about their different values and how much that impacted their decisions. Literally to the end, I thought that was just really interesting because we definitely got a lot of that in the DC season, especially because them being in DC, politics was a big conversation. but I just never saw that as much in the other seasons. And I just really saw a lot of growth in these women. While I felt a lot of these men were sort of stunted, they sort of seemed like the men who we see in maybe like 60 years from now, or just the guy who stayed in Minnesota, married another Minnesotan, and didn't really do much or expand their world that much. Because all of these men seemed sort of, yeah, just limited in their world knowledge and growth. And it seemed like all of the women were a lot more advanced in that regard and wanted more. So that was just sort of interesting to see, especially from a town. Yeah, we learned so much about this weird town or city where everybody knows everybody. And I listened to Lauren on a bunch of podcasts, and she said that the producers made a good effort to make sure that no one actually knew each other on the cast. But once everyone had met, they all were able to make connections, which is so interesting. And people don't also really leave Minnesota, and it's not a place that people really go to either. So your circle is just so small. And it was so interesting how that ended up playing such a role in the outcome of some of the marriages. So, okay, let's start with, I guess, Taylor and Daniel because they're the easiest. They got married. They were the only ones that got married. And I think the only interesting thing that came out of that was that they waited until their wedding to have sex. It wasn't 100% clear, but it seemed as though, so good for them. I wish them all the happiness because, they were perfect. Monica and Joey was an interesting one. So he comes in on like a skateboard, which is ridiculous. What we got out of this one was that apparently they have not said I love you to each other, which is insane. Because we were looking at this relationship, like this beautiful puppy dog relationship. They seemed so into each other. And aside from this, like a little bit of drama with her sister, it seemed like they were pretty much a match made in heaven. They were both like silly, goofy, had a very like carefree lifestyle, don't take things too seriously. But it seems like we either missed a bunch of scenes that they decided to put in seasons one to, or episodes one to six when we didn't care about that shit, or they just never got to it. But like, what do you mean you guys never had a conversation about whether you're in love or not? And it also seemed as though they didn't have sex. It wasn't for sure like spelled out, but it was implied. So if you guys didn't have sex and you guys never said I love you, what were you guys thinking was going to happen at the altar? And why would either of you think that this was going to work? But also, why didn't either of you have this conversation? That's just so wild to me. Why weren't you guys having like real conversations? It almost seems like Juan and Carla on Married at First Sight, if anyone's watching that, two people who literally just were in an experiment, fully beginning to end, just riding the motions of an experiment, and did not ever physically connect or look at each other basically the entire time. So I was just kind of baffled by this one because yeah, I guess I, either they left a bunch out or these two really just didn't bother getting to the nitty-gritty, which is just really bizarre. So yeah, they didn't get married. Um that was just bizarre. And then Sarah and Ben was a really interesting one. So we saw this wedding sort of coming up at the end of the previous drop of episodes. And she ends up saying no at the altar, but the way that she says no is sort of the problem. She says, I love you so much. You're so amazing. Everything about you. It's just that I need to be more aligned. All that stuff she was saying before about the values. I just need to be more aligned with someone. So I'm just like, I can't today. And she's like, I want to make sure this is not misconstrued. I absolutely love you. You're amazing. You're great. And he's like, okay, cool. So we're just not getting married today. I'm happy to continue this conversation. Not this conversation. I'm happy to continue this relationship because that's how she implied it. She totally implied, like, yeah, we're going to continue on. She's like, I absolutely love you. This isn't about you. I just can't do this today. And then she goes, oh, I'll have to see about that. And that was so fucking awkward. And then everyone sort of had the realization of like, oh, no, no, no. She's done with him. So then she leaves and she goes and talks to her mom and her sister and tells them all the things about her values and how, he didn't know what his church's opinion was on equality and just some other things she was concerned about, which is totally understandable. And I'm actually really impressed that these women made these decisions because we saw them going through all these, I don't want to call them red flags because these are things that you just wouldn't want in a relationship if you are very liberal, for example, right? So I'm just saying for her, Ben is not the right person for her. So, you see these obvious things and you see her making the right decision. I was just sort of like, why did she take him all the way to the altar for this? And Lauren Lauren of Dave and Lauren, she was on the You Up podcast and she was asked about this in terms of whether production actually made everyone go all the way to the altar this time. And she was like, no, we're allowed to do whatever we want. Because I was curious about that because you said you loved him. I'm a girl's girl, okay? But I thought she could have told him the night before, or she didn't need to make everyone get all dressed up. I just thought that was a little weird. I also thought the way that she broke up with him was weird because she really did imply, like, yeah, we're going to continue this relationship, just not today. And then when he's like, yeah, let's do that, she's like, whoa, 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 we're not doing that. So I really didn't love that. Then we move into Virginia and Devon, which we get sort of a similar thing. But Virginia, during the whole process, it was almost kind of worse because Devon's mother comes in, the whole family, and they're like, we're so excited to have you as part of our family. And Virginia's like, me too. I'm excited to be a part of your family. And she did seem, I don't know, she seemed a little cold, but I wasn't quite sure. Like, she was looking down a lot, and it was just really hard to tell what her emotions were. But even Devon's niece was there, like this little 5-year-old. She's so excited. And at the altar, she tells him that she's not ready, which makes complete sense given their very weird disagreements about politics and his inability to talk about things. And she says that right after. She doesn't say it to him, but she says to the camera, like, it was his inability to. There was conversations he wasn't even willing to have. And then she said, even sexually, we just didn't get there. So I don't know, again, if she's saying that we never had sex, but it sounds like there just wasn't enough time for them to get to the things that they needed to get to, slash, he actually shut down conversations that she was trying to have, which is really, really important. But the way she put it as like, I'm not ready, she made it seem as though I'm just not ready as a person, which is how Devon's mother took it right afterwards, because she's like, well, why did she do this experiment when she said that she was ready? But I think she meant she's not ready with him. Um, and then the poor little girl is saying, like, oh, what's going on? Because she's so confused because Devon is up there crying. And like the dad has to be like, she said no. And I've just never seen, I think it was Sara and Ben and Devon and Virginia. I've never seen both sides of the families be so shocked. Like, especially Virginia. Like, her dad was like, what? Like, it was just wild. And you would think you would tell your own family, but she didn't. And I wonder if there's like a part of them that really just want to make it all the way to the altar to really see the process through. I mean, the only thing that justifies this to me, listen, I'm not saying these are great guys, but these are not awful guys. And you did say that you love them. So I think it would have been like nice not to have embarrassed them by going all the way to the altar, bringing their whole families there, the niece, the poor little girl, and going through this, putting on the dress, doing all of that. I feel like you could have told them the night before. I mean, they may have still wanted to go through it, like Izzy in that Izzy and Stacey situation where he's up at the altar, he's smiling, he's acting like he didn't have a conversation with Stacey the night before where she said, I am not going through with this. I am not going to say yes at the altar. You could have done that, but no, instead they just went all the way through with it. And I was just a little surprised. I just thought, they could have given them the heads up or have even had the conversations with these men as to why they were not following through because both Devin and Ben seemed very confused. And I just don't know why they couldn't have at least said, we're having these different values, we're having these different beliefs, and I just don't think I can do this. Or at some point, even up at the altar, both of the women didn't really tell the whole truth as to why they were really doing this. They told it to the camera and they told it to family and friends, but not really to the men. And I just thought that was really interesting. One other little piece of tea that I found out through watching Lauren on a few podcasts was that she had actually only found out that she was going on the show 1 week before. So she slept with the guy, the ex, 1 week before, and then the next day found out that she was going on the show. So apparently in the months prior, she was just being told, maybe, we'll see, we'll let you know. And then it was only 7 days prior that she was told that she was going on the show. And from the point that she was going on the show officially, she no longer slept with that guy. The other thing was that Dave has now come out and said that he did give Lauren's letter to his sister. He said that it was up to her if she wanted to do anything with it, but that it was weird that Lauren went through his pockets. And Lauren has said on a bunch of podcasts that she did go through his pockets to see if he had given it to her because she thought he didn't. So that's the end of the episodes, and then we get into the reunion. And I stayed up late for this to watch it. Okay, I normally go to bed at 9 o'clock, but I had to make sure to get this. And unfortunately, I just didn't feel like the reunion was as tea-worthy as I thought it would be. The promo really seemed like it would be, but I think there wasn't a lot more insight that we got from the reunion. That being said, we'll talk about main highlights, and there was a lot of back and forth, which definitely happens in reunions, so they're definitely difficult to recap because there's so much this person said, this person said, this person said, this person said. So, we'll just talk about like main themes like we always do. But of course, Taylor and Daniel are still married. Fun fact, he got a tattoo of her, and I think that is such like a kiss of death. Like if you get a tattoo of someone, I feel like the universe is telling you that you're gonna break up. Didn't Charlie Sheen get like Denise across his wrist and like that? And Jax Taylor has pretty much put every woman he's ever dated on his body, right? And that's never worked out. So I always just feel like that's like a weird thing. And again, I love them, I really do, but I'm just thinking like creepy wise, it's just so funny when like initially Taylor thought he was a creep because of the Instagram thing, and then he ends up like tattooing her to his body, which is you know. But anyways, they just bought their first home, so they're doing amazing. We love them. They're great. Then we move on to Devin and Virginia. And I have to just say, aside from Taylor and Daniel, all of the women are like big mad, okay? And it just seems like a lot has happened in the last year since they filmed because everyone just sort of seemed in a sad place, I guess, when we saw them last. And now, like, everyone is just super, super mad. Virginia especially. So what she's trying to say, or what she tries to really put out there is like, listen, there were certain things that he refused to talk about on camera, including politics. And I really don't even feel comfortable talking for him, but I will say for myself, I support the LGBTQ community. I support women's rights to abortion. I value different religions. And he was just like, well, and you could see she's like really, really angry about it. Oh, and by the way, she also was posting on Instagram in the last few days stories being like, I've rewatched the weddings like 3 to 4 times, and like I didn't see a single tear actually dropping out of his face. So you can tell that she was just like really harboring a lot of rage. And he's just like, I just think that you can have differences of opinion and not agree on everything in a relationship. And, she's just feeling like there was like a lot of little signs that built up over time, and we didn't get a lot of that. But she says there was like a note from his ex that she found the night before the wedding. He says that that's not really an ex, that's like a best friend of his. She was in his wedding party, and the note was more like a positive thing, like, I'm so happy you're moving forward with Virginia. Um, Okay, so there's just like so much back and forth. She said that she ran into his mom a few days before the wedding at a basketball game, and she was like, "Oh, my work contributed $1,000 check to the wedding," and Devin never told her about it, so she feels like he pocketed it, and he was like, "Well, I was gonna, once we went through with it, would then give it to you. I would never like hide anything from you." Um, he said he wanted to be with her after, but she's like, he didn't answer my phone calls. She said he didn't answer her phone calls. They fought after the wedding a lot about what happened in terms of their family, which is what I expected, right? Like, bringing the whole family into it, taking it all the way to the vows, bringing in the little niece, like all of that. Like you could see that even if they were able to get aligned in any sort of ways on their values, which they never were going to, the issue about the families was just never going to jive after that really embarrassing ceremony. So that was them basically. Then we move on to Ben and Sarah, and Sarah's big mad. Oh, and I want to just say one thing about all the men here. So like all the women are big mad, but all the men are very tepid and just being very nice, what I think they call Minnesota nice, where the women you can tell have just been like I said, harboring a lot of anger, resentment. A lot has happened over the past year. They've just found out a lot of stuff, but the men are just acting very like, I was super happy to meet her. We had amazing times. I have nothing bad to say. And so it's just like hard to argue with that. And I don't know if that's just the Minnesota nice or it's also like advice they got from like other people. And you'll see later on, if you watch the reunion, that Ben apparently got advice from Jimmy, good old Jimmy. He's like the superstar of Love is Blind. Gave him advice to like be on good terms with Sara. So we move into Ben and Sara. And Sara said that out of the pods, there didn't seem to be like a curiosity on Ben's end to like move forward in terms of like learning about her values. And she realized like she didn't really know him. And then he says like he didn't really remember his church's stances on equality because it didn't really impact him at the time. So that's how he sort of explained that. And then there's this whole like weird back and forth about what happened after the wedding. So she said that she was sort of open to rekindling, and then she was supposed to go to Nashville for 3 months as like a travel nurse. He was supposed to come with her. They lived for a couple of weeks before they went. Then he thought that they were broken up before she left. She thought that he was coming to Nashville. He removed her from Find My Friends. She got upset about that. But there's like this really weird disconnect where he thinks that they were broken up and that he wasn't coming to Nashville, and she thinks that they were together and that he was coming to Nashville. So I don't really understand that. He said that she didn't talk to her for months. Or sorry, she said that he didn't talk to her for months until like closer to the reunion when he called to be like, I think we should strategize about being on good terms and like practicing reunion questions, which was advice he got from Jimmy. And he says he doesn't remember it like that. But that's what she does. And yeah, she felt like he apologized to her, but she felt like the apology was scripted. So again, it just feels like the men have really tried to either just practice in advance of how they wanted to go about this, or they're just naturally this not nice, but just so non-confrontational that they just are sort of dismissing everything these women are saying in order to just avoid any sort of confrontation. But I think it's more likely that everyone talked to Jimmy, maybe, or maybe a bunch of people got like media advice of just being like, don't say anything bad, don't say anything bad, because even because even then we move into Monica and Joey, and she is big mad. She is just like, she felt like this relationship was embarrassing to watch back because she's like, he was not attracted to me. He wasn't into me. And he said like he feels like we couldn't get past the friend zone because of the sister, which is so stupid. Like the sister was a little jealous. She made up for it the next time, and whether that was genuine or not, she did that for her sister. So, good for her. And whether or not his values have a lot to do with family, which I appreciate, to like make it all down to that just seems so ridiculous. And like I said earlier, you guys weren't talking about being in love, and he didn't meet the sister until later. And then there's all these deleted scenes that have come out where like his friends are saying that he was very trepidatious about marriage. And he was also making these comments like, well, because she's not working right now, I don't really know how she would handle stress in a work environment. It's just like, okay, like I just don't know why you couldn't date after. But again, it just really seemed like he wasn't attracted to her, which she didn't seem to realize until later. And now she's really upset about that because it's embarrassing. But again, he acts extremely nice. He has absolutely the nicest things to say about her. He won't cower or cave. He won't say a horrible thing. And so she just feels like in this sort of contentious place where she's just so angry about how she feels the relationship was portrayed because he wasn't giving anything. And then where do we move on to? So, oh, and then there was this weird stuff about Joey was apparently DMing, sliding into the DMs of other cast members, including Madison. Now the way he portrays it is like, oh, I'm just like a friendly guy. So after we had that like cast member like meetup, he messaged her and was just like, hey, great to see you, love your pink hair. And she said it was more like, oh, I wish we could have talked more, love your hair. But given that you're like married, no, wait, you're engaged. Sorry, they're engaged. It's still very inappropriate, which is totally fair. And apparently he reached out to like a bunch of people, but he said he's just like a nice guy and that's just what he does. But I don't know. It still just baffles me that we really thought these two were like endgame, and it's just wild like how much we didn't even know. And it just shows how much we can place weight on the very little that we see on these shows, because we always talk about reality TV and how little we actually get to see, but we place so much weight on it, right? We think we know someone, or we think we know a relationship based on what we see, but if you think about it, we saw so little to the point where we thought these people were endgame, and now to know that they never said I love you, weren't like he wasn't attracted to her, he never got past the friend zone. I mean, that says a lot, and that these are just all things that we didn't know. That being said, I'm sort of happy about that because like I said, the season was so boring, so it was nice to sort of get a lot more shocking stuff happening at the end. You never really get that at the weddings. Like I wasn't expecting to only have one wedding. It was pretty shocking, and it was also really fun, like I said earlier, to have everyone in the audience be so shocked too. I thought it was kind of crazy that, these women didn't tell their families. But moving on to Lauren and Dave. Lauren says that she's light years ahead of him in terms of emotional maturity, which, we can all agree with. Dave apparently texted her recently after he got some clarity about the ex hookup guy. So it sounds like Dave got some clarity that this guy is like kind of a douchebag. And we can see this. Like, I was just on this guy's Instagram today. So it's at Jim Tan Law. His name is Daniel Nides. And he's been posting shit for a while. He posted something where he basically like made a reel of like including clips from Love is Blind and then posting something at the end implying that he's going to be doing an interview. So it was like him in front of a microphone. But I don't know what that is or when that's coming out. And then 3 days ago, he posted this like meme of him like showing up to the Love is Blind reunion to spill all the tea. And then his caption was like, maybe I am a little bit delusional at Vile Files. It's just so insane that this guy is going to these lengths because even at the end of the day, even if him and Lauren were boyfriend and girlfriend, which they weren't, to go to these insane lengths, it's like this thing I always say where hell hath no fury like a white man scorned. Because this man, I guess, is a little bit butthurt, or he's just wanted the limelight in such an insane way, which is funny because like he refused to go on the show because of his job, because he was worried about, that. But at the same time, he's made himself a Love is Blind poster. He's put himself out there on the internet. So honestly, I think somebody should call the bar because this guy should have his license taken away. This guy is absolutely insane that he's going to these lengths. And it's unfortunate that Dave only found out this stuff now. Lauren appreciates that at the time he was getting this information from his friends, and so he didn't really know any different. But it's interesting now for Dave to hear that this guy is kind of a douchebag and he was, just trying to get on Netflix and trying to be something. And it turns out that he was wrong. And he apparently does admit that she's the one that got away. But then she's like, I don't really agree with you. I don't believe you because you've had my phone number for the last year. You've seen me at bars and not said anything. So that's so true. This whole time he was the kind of guy that wouldn't make the effort because even when like he broke up with her and then they saw each other at the bar the next day, he's like, "Oh, like I wanted to talk to you." And she's like, "So did I." He's like, "Well, you didn't text me." And she's like, "You broke up with me." Like he's just always like placing the blame on someone else or always not making the effort. And I think he's learned a lot from this situation, I guess, if you think about it. What else did she say? He said his friends and family didn't want to meet her, so it was them. But she's like, but before you also said that if it was really important that they would, so she felt like that was a contradiction. Meg and Mason are now no longer dating, but they're just best friends. And then there's this whole thing about like Meg, Mason, Madison, Alex. Honestly, it goes on for a while. I didn't really catch it because it really involved a lot of the stuff that happened in episodes 1 to 6, which were so boring. And because these people didn't like make it through to the end, I'm just like not invested in that drama, but like I don't know, go watch the episode of the reunion, I guess, if you want to be invested in the drama. But basically, it ends with a surprise engagement with AD from season 6 of Love is Blind and Ollie from Love is Blind UK, who met on season 3 of Perfect Match, which is going to come out this summer on Netflix. And I guess they couldn't keep this a secret because they're engaged because the season hasn't even aired yet. But they showed the engagement on the episode, which was so nice. I love AD. She has such an amazing personality, so I'm so excited for her. And I love when they have these crossovers because it's sort of like so Bachelor in Paradise coded because like you come from different shows, you come together and then you go on different shows to find love and then you don't find love and then you go on these like cast off sort of shows and then you find love there and I think that's always kind of cool. And then we got news that the next season of Love is Blind is going to be in Denver, Colorado. So I don't know anything about Denver, Colorado, except I think that's where Heidi Montag is from. I think it's also sort of small town vibes, if I'm not mistaken. And isn't that where that little girl died? What's her name? That really famous little girl. I can't even remember her name now, like Bobby Joe something. You guys know who I mean. Jean-Benet Ramsey. Didn't that all happen there? I just feel like the small town thing is really not a good idea after this past season and how much it really impacted the vibe, the outcomes, really everything. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, I really don't know anything about Denver, Colorado. It gives me sort of an eerie vibe, but maybe that's just because there's been like murders there. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and I love you, BBs. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast in partnership with Hurrdat Media. You can watch full-length videos on Hurrdat Entertainment's YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Bravo Investigator. If you enjoy the show, please leave me a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.
A Hurrdat Media Production.